Are you still pissed off? Yeah, I figured you might be. We're going to be talking about the Cincinnati Bengals and how they completely imploded in the second half in week 8 on Sunday with the Philadelphia Eagles in town. Yes, they are 0-4 at home, which is good. Just let's just put it out there. It is completely unacceptable to be 0-4 winless at home with a quarterback like Joe Burrow and with a wide receiver like Jamar Chase. You are watching Deep in the Stripes. This is the sickest Bengals podcast around, and I am your host, Elise Jesse.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse.
From 31 yards, McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl. They did it. They beat Mahomes at home. Wow, Joe Burrow. No way.
The sickest Cincinnati Bengals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
That game started off as so favorable for the Cincinnati Bengals. That first drive almost looked surgical from Joe Burrow. Now, it wasn't absolutely perfect, but when you look at the stats, there were no penalties on that first drive. That took over 10 minutes off the clock, by the way. They were 5 for 5 on third down. Pretty good numbers. And it ended in a touchdown with a team like the Philadelphia Eagles who were coming in looking to smack you in the mouth. Now, ultimately, Vic Fangio made adjustments and did not allow Joe Burrow and the Bengals to have as smooth of a drive as they did on their first go in this game. The game was tied 10-10, and then all of a sudden, the Philadelphia Eagles just broke the game wide open. I mean, for the Cincinnati Bengals, and by the way, if you were at that game yesterday, as a Cincinnati Bengals fan, I was in awe. I was sitting there looking from the press box thinking, wow, this crowd looks really good. It was a whiteout. Over 67,000 fans showed up to watch the Cincinnati Bengals, and they were looking for their team to not only get to 4-4 on the season, but give their fans their first win in front of their home crowd, and they didn't get it done. So you guys looked great. If you were at that game, the whiteout looked phenomenal. The Cincinnati Bengals didn't look great, especially in the second half. It was a total mess. It was a complete mess. The Cincinnati, yes, I get dinged on this all the time. I think it's just because I am a journalist who likes to see teams run the ball. And just because I have been covering the AFC North and the Bengals for over 10 years, so I know that when that weather gets bad, you have to rely on the run. And I preach that all the time. And when I see a team basically look away from the run and just abandon the run game, you can't get any yards in the run game when you do try. It's just another week of an ineffective run game. Another week of being one-dimensional. Another week where the offense just looks clunky. Another week where a defensive coordinator figures you out and reads you and makes your job very difficult. It's starting to get old, I think, for a lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans. And I feel like I can say that. I feel like I can speak for Cincinnati Bengals fans purely based on the fact that I was born and raised in Cincinnati. So I was raised by Bengals fans. So I know how Bengals fans kind of feel, especially after games like this. And it is funny because I've talked about this before where in years past, when the Bengals would have a bad season, it just wasn't going well for them, people would just turn to basketball season, college basketball season, a big, huge thing in Cincinnati as well. And they would say, well, at least we have basketball season coming up in November. But now you don't get that pass anymore. Why? Because you have gone to a trip to the Super Bowl. You have gone to multiple trips to the AFC Championship game. The expectations have risen for this team. And now falling short is not acceptable. It's not we'll try again next year. No, fans are pissed, and rightfully so. They spend a lot of money to go to these games, a lot of money, and they have watched their team fail to win at home all season long. And the one place they should be winning in, it's the one place where you should feel like you have the upper hand, like you are in a position where you can get the win because you most definitely, if nothing else, have the crowd on your side. Yesterday was brutal. I was worried about them when we saw halftime hit and it was tied 10-10. I'm like, that's really just not a great position for the Cincinnati Bengals to be in. They need to be ahead. They need to be ahead and stay ahead if they want to win this game against Philadelphia Eagles. One of their biggest issues, I felt like yesterday, was their inability to rush the passer. There was no pass rush yesterday. How many times have we said that this season? Feels like a lot, especially at home. What's going on with that? You got everybody healthy now. Well, at least on the defensive line. You should expect to see at least a sack on Jalen Hurts. Yes, I know he's a mobile quarterback, but where was Trey Hendrickson yesterday? Where was Sam Hubbard? BJ Hill was actually graded very highly, I think in the high 80s, according to PFF. He's doing his job. Where's everybody else? Usually Trey Hendrickson can kind of hold the whole defensive line on his back, but we didn't see a lot of production from him yesterday. Jalen Hurts did whatever he wanted to do. What was he? 16 of 20, 236 yards. He threw for a touchdown and then ran for 3 more himself. He did whatever he wanted to do at Paycor Stadium yesterday. But we've said that a lot this season, haven't we? Yes, we have. Why? Let's look at week 3. Jaden Daniels, 21 of 23, 254 yards and 2 touchdowns. He ran for a touchdown as well, so 3 total. Lamar Jackson, 26 of 42, 348 yards, threw for 4 touchdowns. He ran the ball 12 times for 55 yards. He did whatever he wanted to do as well. The Cincinnati Bengals have given up a total over the last 3 home games, 116 points, while only forcing 4 punts total through 3 home games. That's wild. What's going on? And I think it's really interesting. We're a little more pissed off than I realized. I think it's really interesting because yesterday I was hearing the word accountability thrown around a lot. And the reason why I think that's interesting is because discipline is not being thrown around very often. And Marvin Lewis is coming to town next week. His teams were always getting burned by the public because they were undisciplined. But accountability was never called into question with that team. It makes me wonder who is the player because, Joe Burrow, yes, he will let guys know if he doesn't like a route, if he doesn't like a certain play or how they're going about what they're doing, something like that. But he generally has said that he doesn't necessarily like to be in the position of being super vocal. Well, then who is it? Somebody's got to step up and be that vocal leader. I don't know if you guys remember the days of the Vontaze Burficts, the Adam Pac-Man Jones. Whoa, those were crazy years. The accountability was at an all-time high back in those days. Because I think it was 2014, I think it was. Maybe week 5, week 6. The Bengals were playing the Carolina Panthers. And it was overtime, tied at 37, I believe. And time was running out. There was 2 seconds left on the clock. And Mike Nugent had the opportunity to win the Bengals the game in overtime with the kick. And he misses the kick. And they end with a tie. This game wasn't a playoff game. This game didn't totally matter in the grand scheme of the season. But you know what Adam Pac-Man Jones did? He threw a fit. He was losing his mind after the game. He wasn't patting Mike Nugent on the back and saying, "Oh, it's okay. It's going to be all right." That's not how it works in the football world. That's not how it goes. Vontaze Burfict, his teammates were afraid of him. He and Pac-Man would go off on a teammate because they didn't like how their teammates would either practice or perform or thought that their teammate could do better, and they would get in their face and let them know. Very aggressively, I might add. And then you'd see Marvin Lewis pull him aside and pull him into their locker and give him a chat. You didn't know what they were saying, but you can probably guess. This Cincinnati Bengals team, almost had one of those guys. But I feel like, in my opinion, maybe I'm zooming in too much on this, but I don't think the public allowed him to be this kind of guy. If you go back to January 29th, 2023, AFC championship game, it's the Bengals and the Chiefs. It's overtime. There's 4 seconds left to go. They're tied at 20 all. You might remember Patrick Mahomes scrambling out of the pocket, runs to the sideline. Joseph Ossai, very young player at the time, pushes him when he's out of bounds. Joseph Ossai was like full go, full chase mode. Okay. Like there's no way he really could have stopped himself in that moment, but he ends up pushing Patrick Mahomes. And then he gets, and if you watch that whole play, by the way, the refs really should have called some holding penalties on the Chiefs, but you know how that goes. Joseph Ossai at the end of it gets called for a 15-yard penalty, roughing the passer. And that puts the Chiefs in the position in overtime to kick the field goal and win the AFC championship game. Coming off the field, there is a video of Germaine Pratt visibly upset and emotional and screaming, "Why the bleep did you touch the quarterback?" When I saw that, I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, oh, that's normal. That is how they hold, in my experience from watching, from my vantage point, that's always been kind of how they hold the accountability there. Like, you're going to yell and scream at a guy when you're frustrated with him, when you're frustrated with his play, when you're frustrated with his mistake. He did that. Joseph Ossai, of course, after the game was very remorseful. He was in tears. BJ Hill standing next to him and like yelling at media if media asked him a wrong question that he didn't like. But I thought it was really weird that Germaine Pratt the next day felt like he had to apologize to the fan base and to the media for his emotional outburst with Joseph Ossai after that game. Can you recall Vontaze Burfict or Adam Pac-Man Jones ever apologizing to the media for yelling at a teammate for not doing his job? No, in fact, I think I remember Adam Jones, after the Mike Nugent freak out, he was in the media saying, "You get paid to do a job, perform, do your job well, do it correctly." They weren't cutting anybody slack. They weren't patting anybody on the back after mistakes. It wasn't happening. Germaine Pratt felt the need to apologize because he was getting dragged through the mud on social media for holding his teammate accountable. And now in 2024, when you watch this team lose, they walk into the locker room in silence. Maybe they hold each other accountable without the cameras, without the media. But back in the day, and even as far as last year, they were not holding back. They were emotional over mistakes. They were pissed off because they know the stakes are high, because these guys are competitors and they want to be on a winning team. No one wants to be on a 3-5 team. No one wants to be 0-4 at home. But this is the situation we're in. Maybe you disagree with me on that. I don't know. That's my view. Having covered the team for so many years, I just feel like there's just been a shift to where players don't feel necessarily comfortable calling out a teammate or telling a guy when he's completely wrong. I don't know. That's just my thought. I mean, Jermaine Pratt was being called a thug after he called out Joseph Ossai. That dude's not a thug. Vontaze Burfict and Adam Jones were called thugs all the time, but they were used to it. They had been called thugs for multiple years. They were always referred to as thugs. Jermaine Pratt, no. He cares about football, his family, winning. That's it. And when his calling out of a teammate affects his family, he's going to pull back. I really want to talk to him about that. I haven't talked to him about that yet, full disclosure. But I would be interested to see what he has to say. It feels quieter in that locker room. And yeah, they're losing, so you expect a little bit of quietness, I guess. But I would also expect a little bit more anger, fiery attitudes, more emotion within that locker room at 3-5 and 0-4 at home. 0-4 at home, certainly not acceptable at all. And we will go into our rant. I mean, this whole show is going to be a rant. Who are we kidding? Let's just dedicate the entire show to a rant, but let's make sure that we run the clip because we want to make sure that we get that on record.
Elise's Rant of the Week.
Rant of the week. There are so many. I've already touched on quite a few. You've been here with me for it, hopefully. Run blocking is an issue. Their inability to run the ball at all is an issue. They are a pass-first team, but they are a one-dimensional pass-first team. They can't even get like a few chunk yards when they try to run the ball. It is extremely frustrating. No defense is going to respect your run game. You can't run the ball. Why would they? Why would they waste their time? Why would they waste their energy respecting your run game? You've given them nothing to respect. So that's problem number one. I do think that there were two huge factors that contributed to the Cincinnati Bengals loss yesterday. And that was that T. Higgins popped up on the injury report on Friday with a quad injury. And I feel like that was kind of an issue because, first of all, it was late in the staff's like planning as far as like planning for the Eagles and stuff like that. Like that's pretty late in the week to pop up with an injury. So that probably altered a bit of their planning as well. And honestly, not having T. Higgins out there makes it much harder for Jamar Chase. He's double teamed. I mean, yes, thankfully, Mike Gesicki was able to hold his own out there on Sunday. But not having T. Higgins, one of the best receivers on third and fourth down, not having him hurt them a lot. And then I forget what point it was in the game, to be honest with you, but Orlando Brown Jr. checks himself out, walks out. He's sitting on the bench. There's two trainers surrounding him. And you're thinking, oh no, he's re-aggravated the calf. This is because he was already playing through a calf injury that he sustained the week prior, but he was playing through that because he is such an important key component to this offensive line working as well as it does. He's sitting on the bench and he doesn't go back into the game. He's ruled out. He's got a right knee injury. And we see Cody Ford go in. I think that contributed to some of the clunkiness with the Cincinnati Bengals offense that we saw yesterday. I think that Orlando Brown Jr.'s presence on the line, not having him there, is detrimental to this offense. And you should be able to play through that. And guys always say next man up. Next man up should get the job done. Well, that's not always how it is. You lack some quality depth at that position, unfortunately, for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that was a big contributing factor. Trying to think of what else. Joe Burrow. Yes, he had that long drive. And then his stats here are kind of interesting. He was 15 of 25 in the second half. His longest throw in the second half was of 13 yards. That's not going to get it done. He says after the game, he's asked about, being playoff bound. And so far right now, the NFL.com website says that the Cincinnati Bengals have a 28% chance of making the playoffs. And Joe Burrow was also asked about that after the game. And he said, 10 wins gets you in. And so he knows that they have to win 7 of their next 9 games. They are ahead of the Raiders in the AFC, of course, but they have to host the Raiders at home on Sunday. They have not been doing well at home. They haven't won a single game at home. So do you really have confidence going into a home game, even though it's the 2-6 Raiders? I don't. I'm not checking out, but I don't have a ton of confidence. I'm not going to just say, yeah, Cincinnati's going to go in and win it for sure. I know that 100% because I don't, because the play that I've seen from them for home games has left much to be desired. They're better on the road. Kind of wish they were playing the Raiders on the road. At Serani. Did you guys hear the report about Serani after the game? He was screaming Pretty Young Thing, PYT, by Michael Jackson in the visiting locker room after the game. Head coaches love coming to Cincinnati. If you didn't know, that was their franchise. That's their first win in Cincinnati ever. Nick Sirianni was a happy man last night. What else? The 4th and 1 call. What was that? What the heck was that? I remember watching, and I said this already publicly, like on a different YouTube channel, that I was happy to see Zack Taylor go for it on 4th and 1. I was happy to see the aggression from him. The play he called left me very confused. Why are we throw to Jamar Chase all you want? That's fine. But from behind the line of scrimmage, it's 4th and 1. You can't give the ball to Chase Brown. He can't get 1 yard. Quarterback sneak. He can't get 1 yard. No, they lost yardage on that play. That behind the scrimmage pass to Jamar Chase on the sideline. Lost yardage on that play. Awful. And, Zack Taylor, you could tell he was pissed off at himself after the game for that call. But things like that really shift the momentum for a team. The Cincinnati Bengals struggled mightily in the second half. You can't give up 30-plus points to every single team that comes to your house. How are you going to win games that way? You also can't go through a whole entire game and only score 17 points. You're not going to win games in the NFL scoring a measly 17 points. It's not good enough. No, actually, Zack Taylor was saying it's not good enough. We all know it's not good enough. It's further than that. That's disgraceful. That was a disgraceful performance yesterday. I don't know where they go from here. I'm waiting to see how they respond. I'm waiting to see who is going to be the guy that holds everybody else accountable, because I feel like that might be the area where we're lacking, right? Because it just doesn't make sense to have this much talent on your roster, to have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL in 2024, and to not be able to pull out wins. It doesn't make sense. Something's not connecting. Hopefully somebody figures it out soon. And it's actually insane to say you hope the team figures it out soon. We're in week 9. It's a little too late to be still trying to figure things out. You figure things out in training camp. In weeks 1 through 3, maybe. That's still a little late. Week 3 is a little too late to still be figuring things out, in my opinion. We'll see. The Raiders are going to be a test. I still think that they're if you're the Raiders coming in, you're like, Cincinnati's one of the best places to play so far in the NFL. Yeah, if I were the Raiders, I would be excited to come to Cincinnati. Marvin Lewis coming back to Cincinnati to face his former team. That'll be an interesting storyline this week. We're going to dive in to the Raiders and the Bengals coming up on Wednesday. But for now, yes, I can understand why you are still pissed off, still stewing after that game. And you're in the right. That's all I got for you. I'll see you on Wednesday.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.